So the topic of the day is the playbook of a Web3 early stage founders, an overview of the 10 biggest mistakes that we experience as Outlier Ventures. We see a lot of founders coming in, so I'll share with you so that you avoid doing the same mistakes if you're going through a fundraising process as we're speaking, or you plan to do it in the future. So quick know your audience test. Raise your hand if you work in a startup or if you work in a startup in the past. Good. Raise your hand if you're doing fundraising now. Good. I had otherwise another presentation on shitcoins if the audience was terribly wrong for the topic, so good, we'll keep this one. So why are we talking about this today? I'm the accelerator lead at Outlier Ventures. We're the largest Web3 investors. We have a portfolio of over 300 companies. We invest via our accelerator programs. Usually they're thematic programs where we partner with the ecosystem or venture partner that co-invest with us. And through this program, we invest in a very broad range of investment theses. We cover most of the Web3 markets. And we've been in the business since 2016, so we're pretty big OG in the industry. And we got to a place where our brand is pretty strong to attract over 500 applications every quarter. So we're pretty skilled right now, like incorporating all this learning of seeing founders after founders to kind of understanding where we see patterns of founders failing when there's maybe a macro category of things that they do wrong. So we spot these red flags or green flags if we see something really interesting in terms of founders that have success. And we have a pretty we're pretty selective with below 4% of selection rate. So everything you see here, it's a really tough job, the one of the founders, really steep learning curve and journey. So I'm trying to share some insights so that you avoid doing mistakes other people do. So I'm gonna share about the seed stage in an analogy, like why is founders at seed stage require more of this support. If you think about being a founder as finding your partner for life, being at the seed stage is kind of getting to your first date. So I want to make sure all the learnings that you get here is, the important things at first date is not to come across as socially awkward or like really shoot yourself in your feet at the very first impression. So you're probably in that situation if you're not a serial entrepreneur, first time fundraising and it's your first prize round. You're probably in the situation where you have a lot to offer. You're waiting at the table. You think like, okay, I'm gonna impress this partner is gonna be a success. But there's a lot of things that can go wrong. So let's see some together. First mistake is technology first, use cases later. This is something that happens a lot when there is a strong CTO leadership, that sometimes you get attracted by the possibility of improving the technology, and you think, and the mindset is flawed when you think, oh, I'm gonna build this and someone else is gonna tell me where to apply it. This is a very flawed mindset. Sometimes it shows a lack of commercial ability by the founding team. And it happens a lot in the investment committees that we have a lot of experts. They go trying to nail down with technical question. And usually you can spot these kind of founders with a simple question like, why did you start this? What was the first use cases that told you, I need to stop whatever I'm doing, I need to build this piece of technology because otherwise I cannot do this. And this is the kind of question that really puts them on the spot. They don't know how to answer that. And the problem is, it's not impossible to find use cases later on, but what we see is like they waste a lot of time to figure out if you don't start from a pain point you experience yourself in first person or someone really close to you. Because you start from that technical mindset and then you struggle to find the real use cases and you get into the loop. We see a lot of these patterns of people that don't get outside of their technical mindset and they struggle to find their use cases. I'll try to bring some practical example of this. I recently seen a company, I'm leading the program for DeepIn as a theme, and I see some companies that try to deepinize for the sake of doing deepin. So they think, oh, whatever sensor is in the world that we could do something like deepin. Automation machine. So when I ask, okay, what was the first automation machine you couldn't invest or get an exposure to that you decided to build this company? And they didn't have an answer. So these are the kind of use cases where, okay, if you don't have not even the first one, you're going to struggle a lot to figure out on the broader case. And one last thing to mention is that if you're at the seed stage, for us it's really important that you can show that there is a strong match with at least one use case, one niche. You're not in the business of convincing us it's a huge market and validate your market potential. That comes later on. It's probably something for when you scale for Series A. Of course, needs to have a potential to be $1 billion industry. But we want to see first that there is at least one customer niche that cannot live without your product. I think that's more important than trying to appeal to everyone, but you cannot mention one use case. So that's the first one that we see quite a lot. Second one is ignoring profitability. The fact that you're in Web3 doesn't mean that you can discard and forget all the general startup literature. There's a reason why there's category of business models, because most of the time if you try to be too creative on the business model side, it's not a good idea. Most of the time, companies that become billion-dollar companies most likely fit into one of these business models, most likely on those three main ones: SaaS, transactional, marketplace. And also marketplace, it's full of cemetery of that startup that couldn't figure out the chicken and egg problem. So especially the first two, SaaS and transactional, they cover more than 50% of the company that makes it to a unicorn status. So what to see here is in Web3 especially, you have a lot of business model really revolves around transaction fee. I want to make sure when I see a pitch deck that you understand the numbers behind it. Because sometimes you get a very weird match where they're trying to have a value proposition for a niche. Their main differentiator is to have low fee, and their business model is to have a percentage of low fee. A small percentage of small fees of a niche is a very low market. So sometimes maybe you just need to pivot on the business model side. You need to really crunch the numbers. You cannot like just give for granted we'll figure profitability way later on. At least you need to have a path to profitability. Third mistake: don't throw a token for doing it, and we see a lot of this. One thing that changed a little bit, I think after the last cycle, there were more startups that were like launching a token because they failed miserably to do their raising on equity, and they like, okay, we launch whatever token to raise money. We'll bullshit some utility attached to it, and we're gonna basically avoid the problem of we not being able to raise money through a token launch. It's a recipe for failure. One thing to, why did I add the prisoner dilemma there? It's basically, don't try to add a token for the sake of it, because if it's a Web3 savvy investor, it can smell from really far away that you're doing it and don't have a clear idea of the token mechanics that you want to throw. For example, I really hate to listen to a lot of token for cashback, which is pure sales pressure. And some of the founders think it's going to be a magic weapon to bootstrap their supply side without offering any any reason or utility for a demand on the other side, and don't do like the meme where you just throw the staking to solve all your problems. That doesn't work. So there's really nothing that can go right if you trying to add the token without thinking through what's the reason why. Because if it's a Web3 savvy investor, all he's gonna hear is these guys don't have an idea about the token. We rather have the transparency view saying, we want to collaborate with you because we want to structure a token together. We want to figure out if there is any token play we can do here. But the moment that you're just putting bullshit token into the frame, we cannot listen to anything else in the pitch. If that already doesn't make sense, huge red flag. And if it's not a Web3 savvy investor, you're just putting a token to appeal, to be trendy at the moment, they're just not gonna be interested because it's difficult to invest in tokens if you're a traditional investor. So there's really no benefit on trying to do it. And one more thing is tokens at the end, they just add another friction on top of your technology. Especially if you have a consumer app that potentially want to go mainstream, you really want to consider how much token you want to have. You want to have a very good account abstraction, because otherwise you're just adding a new element of friction. So if you're already struggling to get users, don't add friction for the sake of it. Fourth mistake is multi-chain and accelerator hopping. Sometimes it's something that we see a lot in bear markets when maybe your runway is low and you're surviving, changing from chain to get all the grants. But the results usually is a lot of technical debt. Your blockchain infrastructure completely a disaster, and it really doesn't make sense where you end up. Maybe you have one component on one side just because you applied for a grant 6 months ago, and then a part of your technology on the other side, and you're just putting all these puzzles together. You just bring a lot of technical debt. Most of the time, it's better to just scratch everything, start everything from scratch and reinitiate your process. And the second thing is about accelerator. I think this is a very specific founder persona that I see, that sometimes they get success with getting into an accelerator, and for them is a big validation as a founder to announce they've been accepted somewhere. And when they go to the bigger VC world, they don't find the same success. So what they do is they go back to where they found their comfort zone, and they become serial accelerator participant. We've seen like some companies that applied, maybe have gone through 3-4 accelerators, and part of the program is like common. So you also don't want to spend all your time just rebuilding that knowledge. So it's don't do that. As well as when accelerator takes part of the equity, you end up destroying your cap table that no investor would touch ever again if you already gave up too much equity. Pick the best accelerator that really bring the value that you need for you to succeed. Maximum 2 accelerator. If one, for example, brings a lot of commercial partnership, connections, and the second one brings a lot of Web3 credibility. If you come from Web2, maybe do, but otherwise don't do more, because you end up destroying your cap table. Mistake 5 is bad treasury management. We all know we are in a seasonal market, so one thing you should do is be pessimistic in bull and be optimistic in bear. Always try to be counter-cycle with your sentiment. And what you should do is really think through When it's a bull market, there is better opportunity to raise funds. Your valuation might be higher. Don't get overexcited that this is lasting forever. There's no evidence of super cycles so far. So you're in a seasonal market industry. When it's bull market, plan for the bear market. Try to keep runway, which is the most extent as possible, and don't overstuff your company on the bull market scenario, because you're gonna get burned during bear market. And remember that runway is basically your element for negotiation. It's kind of like football players. So if a football player is close to finishing his contract, he knows that he has better negotiational power to move to a different team. So basically, if your runway is really short, then it gives to the VC all the negotiational power, because they know that you're such in need of money, so you cannot really leverage a strong valuation that you could when you're in a safe, stable position. So you really plan ahead your fundraising strategy and account for the seasonality. Mistake 6, start community late. So your KPI on community, you should be really incorporate, well, it should be one of the main KPIs, should evolve with the product and should evolve with your traction. Sometimes is one of the elements that stress out the founder. They think that they're gonna hire a social media intern that will figure out community for them. And it's really like a wrong approach, especially in Web3, that a lot of the value proposition are community oriented. You want to build with the community. If you're gonna have a token in the future, those are gonna be basically your base for the token launch. And if you start too late, it's difficult then to bootstrap the community. You might get to a place where you have everything checked up on your checklist for a successful token launch, and you realize you never talked with your community before. So just start from the very scratch. When even at MVP level, they need to go side by side with the product. So you want to have an MVP that you're ashamed of throwing in the market to start getting feedback. Start channeling your first community into a Discord channel or a Telegram chat. Bring the MVP there, bring the incentives. Like community should grow with the product. So the mistake is when we see strong consumer value proposition and zero community metrics. Mistake 7. This is actually something that I experience a lot, because there's some of the literature in startup or accelerator kind of romanticize the idea of pivoting, because you think as a founder, I'm gonna be like a phoenix. I'm gonna reborn, resurrect with the new shape, and I'm gonna show how adaptable I am. What we read on the other side when we see pivoting company from the investment committee, remember always that the VC people think is really willing to take risk, but there's no person on earth which is more risk adverse than a VC. We're in the business of managing risk, spotting everything that can go wrong early on. So we have a mindset when we see pitches or talking with startups, which is really identifying the red flags, not the other way around. And basically what a pivot kind of ring a bell for an investor is case 1 is pivoting to surf new trends. So what's the shiny object at the moment? It's AI, so they're putting AI in their deck to attract funds, really typical thing. So all the investment committee is gonna be oriented of figuring out if there is a real use of the AI or it's just thrown in the value proposition for no reason. And actually, case 2, this is even more frequent to see, is founders that get anxiety from going to market. They're like these eternal builders. They just like to build. And whenever they're ready for the market, they're trying to find something to move away to keep building because they get this anxiety. So don't do that. Fight your anxiety, go to market, fail, and understand what went wrong, really work with these hypotheses. Startups are a bunch of hypotheses put together. You should work as you were in the lab. Like, how do I prove or disprove these hypotheses? What are the hypotheses that make me successful? And then you tie them with your OKRs. If you strategize, put them together in a sensible ways, when you achieve your experiments in a successful way, you meet your OKRs, and that goes with your traction. So pivoting is usually, it's not bad, because but you need to justify, be transparent, or you pivoted, what did you learn before, and how is the new product connected with what you built before. Because if you're pivoting to something that is completely disconnected, I'd rather invest into a company that was built from scratch yesterday without that technical debt, or with a short runway, for example. Mistake 8. This product could have been a feature. I heard this so many times from the technical team when they go through the technical due diligence. Sometimes you find something that has adoption, people likes it, you get a lot of users, but it just doesn't have substance. And if it's too little to provide, then you're gonna fail at the conversion stage. So you get adoption, but you cannot really convince the users to pay a price to it, because what you're offering is just too small. And sometimes you're building this on top of other platforms. So for example, maybe it's a plugin to a Slack feature, but then what you're doing is basically, if you don't have a plan to just get it away and build a product around it, it's just gonna be a feature, and you're gonna be stuck with the feature forever. Mistake number 9, this is kind of controversial, because there is a lot of stigma, bad stigma around solo founders. We invested in solo founders, we keep investing in solo founders, but you need to prove that actually, we want to figure out why you've been a solo founder so far. And it could be a sign of a few things. So first of all, it might be a sign that you cannot you don't have the charisma to inspire other people, to bring them into your vision. So the same way you couldn't maybe find a partner, then might happen as well when you go to market to find commercial partners and clients. So maybe it's something that we want to stress test in investment committees if we see a solo founder, if that's the case. And the second thing is maybe like from more a personality standpoint, it might be a sign of a founder who's over-controlling. He wants to do everything on his own standard, and it's not really a team player. So it might work as far as it works, but it will reach a place where you cannot be bootstrapping solo founding forever. So eventually you need to transform into a team player. So this is really controversial. And there's more times where investing in the solo founding goes wrong than it goes right, for experience. Finally, what's the end game? I really like this one, because there's a lot of, there's a different personality in founders. Some of them are strong executor. So I like that they don't get lost. They really want to get to the market quickly. But it's really like a balance. That's why it's good to have a multidisciplinary team that all these kind of personality traits are represented. And it's always good to have at least one person, ideally the CEO, is more visionary. So one thing I like to see when I hear some pitches is how is the work gonna look like if your service gets adoption? So I want to see if there is what are the, it's really difficult that your service doesn't depend on the context and some external factors. I want you to be aware of what should happen for you to be a billion-dollar company, because sometimes it's some legislation framework that changes, or kind of adoption, user interfaces. Maybe your startups depends on people starting to put smart glasses, or one recent one I got to see in an investment committee was regarding a DPIM project on drones for delivery. So of course, when you're betting on that company, you're also betting on the idea of a future they're really gonna rely on drone delivery. If you don't believe in the first one, in the second one, then you'd also not buying into the company. So basically, sometimes investing is not just buying into the service, but it's also buying into a future state of the world, especially when there is a strong ambition. So I think we're up on time. And I wanted to ask you, if you've been founders, you realize you've done something wrong, what was your mistake? What would you do differently? If there's anything you would add to this list of 10, so we reiterate for a future talk. Open to question.
If anyone has a question, please raise your hand. Yeah, right here.
Cool. Oh. Yeah, so I guess to answer your question, I think I had a startup in Canada that I feel like the biggest mistake was having too many cooks in the kitchen, so too many co-founders, and co-founders that didn't necessarily have complementary skill sets, because there was some that had similar skill sets and they got along, which is great, but ultimately when you're down to execution, you have maybe too many visionaries and not enough people actually executing on the vision to get to where you're trying to go. So I think for me, the thing that I'm doing differently for next time is really thinking about, okay, do I have all my bases covered for when we want to scale? Do I have someone who is that technical person? Do I have the marketing person, the sales person, and the person who knows how to hire, the HR, and build the team? Because I think one of the biggest things that I've seen from the startup I used to have, and as well as startups that I see in the space, is that you might have a really good idea, but you don't know how to build the team to take that idea to scale. And you might have had some success already, but you just don't know how to get to that next level. So.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's something that happens in corporate, but even more in startups, that you have you have like bias in your hiring, where you research people you get along, but you escape complementary skills. There's a lot of halo effect and projections that you do. So, and another element is that you as a founder, for example, you should evolve in your leadership with evolving of the company. So there's some theory, for example, that say, okay, maybe Elon Musk was great to kick off Tesla, but might not be the ideal CEO for Tesla right now. Or maybe the CEO at Apple might even be better than Steve Jobs itself for this current stage of the evolution of the company. And the same is for startup. So especially when you become a scale-up, your hiring skills, people management skills, and ability to delegation becomes more relevant. For example, I know my personality trait would be better as an earlier stage to kick it off, but I struggle on the delegation side. So probably you need to be aware of these personality traits and maybe step down or bring in more rebalance the power with someone else that fit into your team.
Is there anyone else that'd like to answer or ask a question? Okay, I just wanted to add one more. I wanted to back that up because I've had that exact same experience that you've mentioned. And also add that when you have too many engineers leading a project, that can lead to perfectionism and never actually getting anything launched, because there's a lot of theoretical what-ifs in the room that people are too concerned about to actually even just get something functioning out the door. And yeah, a lot of missed opportunities due to that. But in any case, let's get one more round of applause. Thank you very much.
Yeah, guys, don't do engineers. Red flags, just don't hire them.